Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joined by Bryan Anthony Davis and Dave Schofield as this, I guess it's a post-game podcast. The Steelers didn't play. It's the very end of the Steelers can't lose week. That's also known as the bye week. And the AFC North is kind of a jumbled mess. We're going to talk about that. But let's bring in my co-host first, Bryan Anthony Davis. What's up, Bryan?
Hey, fellas. Good to be here. Steelers are getting a rest. None for us.
No, never. Dave Schofield, what's up?
Hey, let's talk about what we've been watching around here, guys. This is crazy.
Before we went on the air, Dave was like, you guys are going to do a podcast. You didn't watch anything. I said this on Thursday. How much football am I going to watch? 0. And I haven't watched any. I've been keeping track of scores. Obviously, I'm interested in my FanDuel lineup, which I was literally riddled with 425 players. So still a lot up in the air there. But I was checking the Bengals and the Ravens score. I'm like, what in the world is going on? First and foremost, before we get into this, who were you all rooting for in this game? Because I had my reasons, but I know a lot of people on Twitter, when I asked the question to my ride or die crew, I said, who are you guys rooting for? Bryan, who were you rooting for in this AFC North matchup?
Well, if you took a look at the rooting guide, you would see that as much as you don't like him, you have got to root for the Bengals in this situation. And the reason why is because the Ravens, the more that they win in a weird way, in a lucky way, in a 2 a.m. way, the more momentum and the more they start to believe it, and the better they get. And, then they feel like they're invincible, and sometimes that carries on. The Bengals, it's dangerous to root for the Bengals, but you have to go with the team with the better record and get them knocked down a peg. The Steelers do have an opportunity to play the Bengals again, and I think that this whole thing might come to an end. But right now, they're playing some very good football, but they still have 2 losses.
It's true. Dave, what about you? Who are you pulling for in this AFC North grudge match?
Oh, honestly, for now, you have to pull for the Bengals. And it's funny because in 6 weeks from now, or I don't even know when the 2 of them play again. I didn't even look, didn't even care. There might be later on in the season that you're cheering for a different team. Because, think about it. Last year, how crazy was it that on that Monday night fiasco, crazy back and forth game with the Browns and the Ravens, we actually had to pull for the Ravens because of the way everything was going in the standings at the time. So, yes, it might be different later on in the season. Now you're like, wow, the Bengals are 2-0 in the division. Maybe we shouldn't be You know what? We can cheer against them other weeks. For this week, you had to hope that they pulled off, not because we wanted them to win, but merely because we wanted Baltimore to lose.
Well, I always viewed it as you just kind of wanted everyone else to try to come back to the pack. Like, you didn't want that one team. So if the Ravens would have won in week 7, you're looking at them at 6-1. And then there's this muddled mess of everyone else. With the Bengals winning, now they're 5-2. They have the head-to-head win. And you have the Browns are 4-3, who the Steelers play in week 8. So, Bryan, when you look at the Steelers in the AFC North, how do you view their chances now compared to last week?
I still think that things can shake out with 5 division games to go. Back again to the Ravens, you've got to realize, somebody said, well, the tiebreakers count. And I saw that in the live chat, and they really do. But, if the Ravens have 1 loss and they keep going, and then they're far away, and then those head-to-heads in December might not count as much. So you need to get them back down to earth. So with the Steelers at 3-3 and the Bengals at 4-2 now, it's basically a 2-game lead. But that could change November 28th when you get head-to-head and with everything else shakes out. Now, this team is not going to go forever and continue to win because they're going to lose some games too. The Bengals are going to lose. But right now on this day, the rooting guide says you have to go with the Bengals, and you should be happy about a Bengals win and worry about the after effects tomorrow. Is a monster being created with them still winning and winning and winning? Yeah, possibly. But you got to take it and enjoy it because the Steelers needed that and that helped them. So as far as the Steelers go, if they can carry on their momentum and they get a win next week, then the next thing you know, they're going all the way to November 21st against a good team in the Chargers and then the Bengals the next week. So they could really make up some ground. So this win helped them so much. So I like their chances.
Dave, I'll ask you the same question. What are your thoughts about the Steelers AFC North chances? Did they look any different for you in after week 7 compared to even last week in week 6?
Bottom line is, the closer everybody is grouped, the better it is for the Steelers when you're not the team that's out in front. If you're the team that's out in front, you don't want people grouped at all. You want them spread out.
Right.
But if you're the one trying to catch up at this point, the closer everyone's grouped together, the better off. But you know what? You wanted the Bengals to get that one. You can't, honestly, right now. Let's say, I know it's not, because the Steelers are playing the Browns next week. But if it was the Bengals and the Browns next week, who would you have to be pulling for? Now you've got to hope that the Bengals get another conference loss in there. So it's going to constantly be mixed up and everything. And it's going to change throughout the season. You know, you really wish that as much as you like seeing AFC North football, I also like seeing non-AFC North football. So every team has a chance to lose. Yeah. So, but I like the Steelers' chances now. Now it's all about them. They don't need as much help as they would otherwise now with everyone coming back a little bit closer. They can take care of their own business because you still have Baltimore twice, Cleveland twice, and the Bengals one more time.
Okay, let me ask you all this question. Steelers have 5 divisional games left. What do you think their record has to be in those 5 games to really have a chance at winning this division? And I know there's more games other than that, but just talking about the division rating or record. There you go. Bryan, what do you think? 5 games left.
4-1.
Really?
Yeah.
Who do you think that one loss is to?
I'm still gonna say Cleveland, possibly. They could lose a game to Cleveland. It could be January 3rd, or it could be next week. Hopefully, it's not next week. But the thing about that January 3rd game, things could be that might not be as important at that point.
Yeah.
So
you think
the two Ravens and Browns games. Oh, I definitely think the Ravens can be had. That's why this loss was so important, because this is a back down to earth loss for them. This wasn't, losing by 3 points. This was a shellacking. And when you get beat like this changes luck, because they were riding with a horseshoe up their patooties is what they were doing the entire time. And from the beginning of the season, I mean, the Chiefs, all these games, the Lions, I mean, they were riding on luck. And when you ride on luck and you start relying on it, and then next thing you know, you're like, all right, I've got this. You get stronger. You feel like you've got momentum, and momentum is a crazy thing. But when you get you got punched in the face. And it wasn't a sucker punch. They came right up to you and said, biff, and knocked you down. And when that happens, I could see the next couple of weeks being rough for this team. And there's no one I like to be seen biffed in the face more than Mr. Harbaugh.
Oh, Wang.
Can't stand the guy.
Wang
I got to turn it into a verb. I loved it.
Biffed. Oh my gosh. And it was in Baltimore too. Let's keep that in mind.
Better.
It was in Baltimore. Yeah. Dave, I want to ask you the same question I asked Bryan about 5 games left. What do you think the record has to be?
Yeah, well, I think Bryan's right, because here's the thing you got to remember about the Bengals now. They're 2-0 in the division, and that's 2 of their 3 road games.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty big when you look at it in that light, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I think Bryan's right. I think they would need to go 4-2 overall to have the best chance at the North. That other loss can't be to the Bengals. It can't be.
Right.
If that's it, then you really don't have a chance. There is a possibility if these teams just start, going round robin style, where you get everything thrown off, where there a bunch of them are 1-1 against each other. It's possible that 3-3 could do it, but I really doubt it. I think it would take 4-2 to win the division. And as for who they would lose to, I'm still under the adage of, I think the Steelers can win every week. So I'm not going to pick a game in week 17 or 18 that I think they're going to lose. I just want to see them get there by winning every week.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, we always say this. We say it every year, and that is, the schedule is going to change. We all talk about the strength of schedule based on the last season's win-loss totals. But throughout the year, things changed. The Seattle game changed when Russell Wilson got hurt. Kansas City game, hello. That was like, oh, they have to go to Arrowhead. They're going to lose. Just put an L there. The Chiefs got beat 27-3 by the Titans today.
Mhm.
And Patrick Mahomes, I think, got banged up. He was questionable
Yes,
return,
he did.
I saw. So, hello. I mean, that game was what a lot of people would say guaranteed loss. I'm sorry. You're watching a different game if that's what you think about the Chiefs. I didn't see any of this game just from the scores, just from the defense. The Chiefs are awful on defense right now. That's why there's rumors that they might be interested in Melvin Ingram. I'm not buying that. But Dave, you probably saw more of it than either Bryan and I did. So I ask you first, what's going on with the Chiefs right now?
They're not a good team right now.
Yeah.
Right now. But the problem is, what is
hard.
it? Yeah, we got to play hard. I'm sorry. That's that whole right now. Never mind. Another How I Met Your Mother reference. It's.
Do you want to go into your question thing right now?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll get to it. What I was going to say about that is you don't know if that's the same, if they're going to be playing right now. They're ripe for the picking, but come December, they might not be. Kind of like the Steelers in week 3. They were sitting there with none of their starting outside linebackers. They were ripe for the picking for the Bengals. They weren't playing well. They hadn't figured out an offense. Their offensive line hadn't come together. That's kind of how the Chiefs still are right now. The problem is the Steelers don't play them until December. I wish they played them next week because of how it goes. But yeah, I have 3 kind of questions to you guys, and Jeff brought up one of them here with Kansas City. The first one is what I'm going to ask right now. Who's the biggest AFC poser who's not really a contender? The Ravens or the Chiefs? Who's going first?
I'll go first. I'll say that in terms of schedule, it's obvious you would say that the poser is the Chiefs because they have the worst record. But I say the Ravens are the bigger poser. I don't think the Ravens are that good at all. And like Bryan has said, they've had a horseshoe up there, patootie, I think was the word that he used. And they've been riding Lady Luck for a long time. And it runs out. Look at last year for 2020 Steelers. There are a lot of people that say there was luck that carried them to 11-0, and then look what happened down the stretch. I say it's the Ravens. What about you, Bryan?
Absolutely, you've got to go with the Baltimore Ravens. That's not easy. Dave is right when he talks about the schedule and the December Chiefs, because they might get it together like the Steelers are getting it together. If you look at the Steelers' early schedule, you look at the Raiders, you'd much rather have the Raiders in December because I don't believe in them whatsoever. I would have rather had them then when they're struggling to get to 500. I think that's a different game. We could probably all agree now that the Steelers right now going into week 8 are a different team than they were in week 2 or 3. So so these teams do improve. I'm never going to count the Chiefs out until it all falls apart. And the thing about the Chiefs, if you look back in history to the Steelers, one of the greatest seasons that they had that they did not win a Super Bowl was 1976. And they started off very poorly. I believe it was, help me out, Dave, a 1-4 record to start.
1-4.
They had an amazing defense that year. They probably would have won a Super Bowl again if Bradshaw was banged up. But if Harris and Blyer, 2 1,000-yard rushers in that season, are not playing. If they're playing, they're probably going to win that Super Bowl, but they were hurt in that game. They tried to ride Reggie Harrison, and it just didn't work, and their luck ran out that week. So, so with that being said, this team, they can continue to lose right now, then suddenly turn around and get it all together. We've seen that with teams like the Ravens in the past. With the Patriots, remember in Super Bowl years with the Patriots, they start off 2-2. Next thing you know, they're unbeatable. They reach that low point and they're like, enough is enough. We saw that in 2005 with the Steelers. It's like Bill Cowher comes in and says, boys, it's December 11th. We're taking on the Bears. You have got a series of 8 one-game playoffs at this point. And what did they do? They won 8 one-game playoffs. So there you go.
Yeah.
Dave, in the words of Drew Rosenhaus in the driveway of Trello. And next question.
All right. So we talked about who's the bigger poser. I'm giving you two choices that are still on the Steelers schedule. Who's the hotter team right now? Is it the Cincinnati Bengals or the Tennessee Titans after they just defeated the, who started off rough and then just beat the Bills and the Chiefs back-to-back weeks?
Right now, I think it's the Tennessee Titans. You're talking back-to-back wins against two of what a lot of people said were elite or top of the, top shelf teams in the AFC, however you want to call it. My goodness, you say what you want about the Bills not kicking a field goal on Monday Night Football and Josh Allen going for the sneak and slipping, whatever. But the Titans have found a way. And this was a team that early on, they were getting shellacked, and everyone's like, what was going on with Tennessee? They've righted the ship, but that's a really tough question. I'm going to go with Tennessee. What about you, Bryan?
Can you give me the other team? Because I was listening to Tennessee and I completely lost the other team.
Or Cincinnati.
Head. Cincinnati,
who they have lost out of their last 5 games. They did lose in overtime to Green Bay in there, but other than that, they've won 4 of their last 5.
It's a great loss, by the way.
Yeah, that was a Cincy loss. In the words of one Mark Davison, who is on the live chat and hates the Bengals, Bungles will be bungles. And I kind of think that they're going to go back into that. I think they're getting better. I just don't think that they are the team that they need to be right now. There's still some suspect units in that lineup. I do absolutely love what Joe Burrow does for that team, teaming up with Jamar Chase. I think they're a top duo. I think Burrow is for real, and I've been singing that for a while. And I gotta say, I think he's the least objectionable out of all the other AFC North quarterbacks. Well, there's 2 others. I'm not talking about Ben, but the Tennessee Titans, I think they're going to get stronger, and things need to start to get together for this team. And they started off, man, they got killed by the Cardinals in the opener. And the Cardinals, of course, we're finding out the Cardinals are for real. But then it's kind of like the Bills. They got smacked in the face week 1. Like, all right, we're better than this. And they put everything together. They've got the best running back in the league. They've got a quarterback.
He didn't have a very big day today, believe it or not, other than throwing a touchdown on their opening drive, which was interesting. So, sorry, go ahead.
But it's just a situation where they're going to lose a couple more games, but they're the better team, and they're the team that you look at here. I would expect for them to rise up in the power rankings quite a bit. And, I joke and I talk about the rooting guide all the time, but I kind of believe in the rooting guide. When you look at the Tennessee Titans, the rooting guide said no problem with them winning. In fact, they're going to run away with that division. Look at everybody else in that division, the Texans, the Jaguars, the Colts. So
they've got no competition there.
So the Steelers, for Steelers' sake, if the Tennessee Titans win, doesn't matter because they're going to win that division. Yep. So, and you're looking at when you're looking at getting into the playoffs, you got to look at who to root for, and that's a team that you're not going to have a problem with. You could root for them every week, just not in week 15.
Yeah, I just realized I didn't answer my own questions. I didn't answer the first one, so I'll answer them both right now.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, the biggest poser, I'm going with the Ravens because honestly, if something happens to Lamar Jackson, that team is done. He is carrying that team to everything that they're doing.
Who's their backup now?
He came in at the end of the game. It was why can't I remember? But he played at the end of the game.
They got rid of McFarland, I think.
I can't remember. Someone will put it in the live chat. I watched him play a little bit.
I know who it is too.
Number 2. I know that. I just couldn't remember his name is.
Number 2.
Number 2. Yes. But so I'm going to say that the Ravens are the bigger poser. I'm going to say the Titans are the hotter team. The basically the 2 losers from that question, because you don't want to be the biggest poser and you would like to be the hotter team, are the 2 AFC North teams, because the biggest reason is I don't know that the Steelers have 2 other teams that they have a run for their money against who has a better offensive line. Because the Bengals offensive line still looks absolutely rough. And my goodness, the Ravens offensive line this game looked terrible as Lamar Jackson got sacked like 27 times, it felt like. Last question. I just have to ask, what sucks more? The Steelers bye week or Baker Mayfield?
Baker Mayfield.
You can get a Dyson the best vacuum in the world, arguably, and that doesn't suck as bad as Baker Mayfield. You know the song Cleveland Rocks? I've changed it to Cleveland Sucks. Baker sucks.
Yeah.
And I've made lyrics too.
Because I'll be honest with you, I would love to see Baker Mayfield in uniform for this week because I think he's the worst quarterback on their roster. I've laid it out time and time again that they've surrounded him with the best offensive line in the NFL. And they didn't even need the 2 great rushers this past week. They had just some guy no one's ever heard of running up and down the field for the Browns to win. All you need is a quarterback to not screw it up. And yet with him as the starter, they were 3-3.
Mama didn't raise no wuss. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back after this to talk about more nonsense about the week that was in the NFL. Stay tuned. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, we're back for part 2 of this post-game podcast, if you want to call it that. I'm here with Bryan. Dave has disappeared for the time being. He'll be back shortly. All right, Bryan, let's talk a little bit about this upcoming Cleveland game. What are your just general thoughts about the game coming up? We're going to break it down a lot this week, but what are your general thoughts, Bryan?
I love the fact that they're going to go ahead and play Cleveland as they're trying to get back. I kind of agree with Dave because everybody knows I'm a Case Keenum fan.
You love some Case.
Case. I like it. Don't get off my Case because I love the guy. I still tell you, if they had him in 2019 Super Bowl, baby, instead of Duck, if they would have had Case, that's my thing. But, I think he is one of the better backups in the league. And Dave hit it on the head where if you have a good running game, you could do a lot of things. I think this is really the game that could shut the Browns up. So I'm going to go back to my rooting guide and say, look, when the Browns played the Broncos, you still wanted to root for the Broncos and against the Browns, but it actually kind of benefits the Steelers if the Browns win that game because you don't want to go into a game against a team that you've been big brother to for a long time that hates you more than you hate them. And that's true. Steeler fans do not hate the Browns the amount that Browns fans hate them. And I think the Browns players hate them at this point as well. So with that being said, I think if you go ahead and beat them, you could actually kill the Browns this weekend because it's not like the Chiefs. It's not like the Bills or that take a loss and could come back from it. I think if the Browns take a loss to the Steelers this week and they go to 3-4, I could probably say, they're not coming back. So this is a chance to slay a giant in their own mind. Because the Browns think they're giants.
Yeah. Dave just asked him what his general thoughts were leading up to this Week 8 game against Cleveland. Just very general. We're going to be talking about it a lot this week, but just want to get your thoughts.
I want to see once again, I still don't think it's as much about the Browns as I do think that it's about the Steelers, that the Steelers have to do what they do. I want to see how this team looks different coming out of the bye. I want to see what the coaching staff came up with and with how they're going to work personnel and run various things on offense and defense coming out of the bye week. For some reason, I want to see this team hit the ground running in Cleveland. And if there's anything else, just going to Cleveland should be enough to get you fired up and ready to play this game.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my goodness, if you can't get over this one, there's something wrong with you. But Dave, can you please, for the people, there's a lot of people in the live chat really get confused with this. Can you explain the IR rules and coming off of IR, just in general terms? People are like, I hope we get Tua back for this game. He's not going to be back in this game.
It's not out of the realm of possibility, but
it is.
Bottom line is, and when a player goes on IR, as long as they've been on the 53-man roster for at least one day. So I have to tell you that for people early on when the Steelers were losing 3 games in a row that were calling for Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs can't play for the Steelers this year. He went on IR without being on the roster. He can't return. His season with Pittsburgh is done. The only thing they could do if he's ready to play would be they'd have to release him and he could sign somewhere else, but he couldn't sign back with Pittsburgh. So that's one. 2. Once a player goes on, it's 3 games. I used to say 3 weeks, but I'm pretty sure it's 3 games. I don't think the bye week counts. I think I think if you go on IR and it's a game and then abide in the game, I think it's got to be a third game. Because if you think about it, when the Steelers had their players go on IR after being on the roster for a day, it didn't count that there was no game that weekend, if you know what I'm saying, that they still had to miss 3 games. Once they are deemed eligible to come back to actually practice, they have to be designated as a return from IR. Once they are designated as that and they can practice, the team has 21 days to put them on the 53-man roster, or else they go back on IR for the remainder of the year. So I've seen the Steelers activate, like last year, the Steelers activated Wisniewski, didn't put him back on the roster for the full 3 weeks because so much changed in that time. They brought him back for a couple days and then cut him. You know, things could change in there. I've also seen in the past where the Steelers had someone that was returning. They brought them back on Wednesday and they put them on the roster by the next game. So you could do that. Zach Banner was due Tuesday, but they already signed him. And I think you still have another week of, wow, I'm getting some crazy feedback of some kind. You guys got me?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Someone like Anthony McFarland, they have until, I'm pretty sure, the following Tuesday, so he wouldn't necessarily be brought back. They could bring Tua back to practice this week and activate him on Saturday. It's just not how they generally do it.
Do you think McFarland comes back this week?
Wouldn't be a bad time for him to come back. I mean, the 21-day window, that didn't matter about the game. So he still has another week, but I think they just have to decide what they're doing going forward.
Bryan, what about you? Your thoughts on McFarland?
Brian, you are still muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I was just making sure that feedback wasn't me, and I guess it wasn't because I was on mute to keep.
I think someone was running a vacuum cleaner.
Not in my house. We don't know.
That's my house. Good Lord, I'm sorry.
Hey, at least cleanliness is nice, Jeff. That's okay.
Cleanliness.
My thoughts on
Anthony. Go ahead.
My thoughts on Anthony McFarland are this. You know, I'm at this point I'm going to say it about Tuitt as well. I'm taking the Mike Tomlin route. I'm only concerned about the guys that are available to play. If he shows up at this point, it's extra. You're right now. You're riding that Najee Harris train. You're hoping it doesn't derail, and it can derail in different ways. But I can't get excited about a guy that you don't know whether he's going to be back or not. Something's seriously wrong for him to be out this long, and that's Anthony McFarland too. So if he gets back, then you probably have. I mean, he's right away the number 2 rusher on that team. He's going to be the best. In fact, somebody gets cut if he comes back. But the problem is, don't know if he's ready yet. When he comes back, that's going to help this team, but it's really hard for me to get excited. And because I've made, look how long it's been about me saying Zach Banner is going to be playing this weekend. Zach Banner is playing this weekend. Okay, now Zach Banner is going to play this weekend. Look, I'm not getting excited about Zach Banner until he actually runs out on the field and plays.
Well, McFarland came out and said he tore his MCL, I believe, at the end of the preseason. And it was an injury that had kind of plagued him throughout college. So he had to completely rehab that. I'm not sure if that was a surgical repair or what, but that's why he's been out. So, I mean, you're talking about a torn ligament in your knee. That's significant. It's not your ACL, but it's still a ligament in your knee.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Dave.
And I was going to say, I'm not convinced that he's definitely the number 2 when he comes back. I mean, us as the fan base believes that, but then again, we thought he was going to be maybe the number 2 guy last year. And how many times was he not even active?
Yeah.
You know, simply because we liked what we saw in the preseason as fans doesn't mean that the Steelers are ready to insert him in that role right away. So though I'd like it, and I think it's the way they should go, I'm still not convinced that's the way they're going to do it.
Go ahead, Bryan.
You know what's funny about that, Dave, and I agree with what you're saying. The problem is we need him to be we need him as fans to be the Steelers number 2, and the reason we need that is because we weren't excited about Benny Snell Jr. in the preseason. We definitely aren't excited about Benny Snell Jr. in the regular season, and right now he's what you got next to Kalen Ballage, and I think Kalen Ballage is considered their short yardage guy at this point. So I'm thinking that he's got to be the answer to be backing him up, and probably the guy you need him to be.
Okay, question for you guys: when he comes back, we know McFarland is going to come back at some point. Who loses it? Who loses their spot? Who do you think, Dave?
I would have assumed it was Ballage, but then the last game, he got the other offensive snaps when Benny Snell didn't. We don't know if that's because of the
shoulder, the arm thing. Yeah,
if it was from him getting dinged up on special teams, but Snell still played on special teams. So I don't know. I don't know if that was an indication due to injury or because of what the Steelers are wanting to do. So that's the thing. There's no reason to keep 4 running backs. If you're going to run Najee Harris that much, there is no reason to keep 4 running backs plus a fullback on your offensive roster. So I still was going to say Ballage, but I'm not 100% sure with that now. Although Snell does bring the special teams.
Bryan, what do you think?
I think they would keep Snell, but everybody would rather them keep Ballage. And when I say everybody, I am guessing that everybody would think that Kalen Ballage is a better running back at this point. But guess what? The Steelers the coaching staff seems to want to have Benny Snell Jr. in that role over Ballage.
Dave, you brought up a question I wanted to ask you. I'll get your thoughts. This is something I've been asked a lot on my Wednesday Let's Ride podcast, where I answer questions from fans from Twitter. A lot of people are concerned about Najee Harris's workload. I mean, he played 100% of the snaps in week 1. He hasn't done that since. Is that a concern for you? Yes or no, Dave?
Yeah. I mean, it's concerning just because you never know when that's going to come around in the wrong way. If you know what I mean, that it's something that's concerning, that it's like, well, you want to worry, you want to think about that and keep it in the back of your mind. And it's not a big deal until it comes up and ends up being a huge deal. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. For all you know, he could be like another Alabama running back that we know of, and Derrick Henry, and just play tons of snaps and have tons of carries and be able to do it every single game.
Which you're the person that brought that up. It was I know, because you did that podcast, and I was like, wow, like you're right. Derrick Henry is never hurt.
Yeah, and that's why I predicted him to get hurt this year, because statistically, he's the only running back that hasn't missed a game due to injury in like the last 3 years. Well, he might have missed one where I think he could have played, but they rested him in not in week 17. They did it in week 16, and that was, I think, 2019 that they did that, if I recall. So he's just kind of an anomaly. So you're kind of waiting for him to come around, but if he doesn't, then you're wondering, what's he doing that's so great? So it's kind of like with Najee Harris. You need to be concerned about. I'm not concerned about it because he's a rookie. Some people are like, oh, well, the rookies and they're not used to it and this, that. I mean, that is another factor, but to me, that's not the biggest factor. To me, the biggest factor is just NFL running backs in general and how things like that happen and they get dinged up. But then again, you could also take Najee Harris and only play him in 10 snaps in a game, and he could still get dinged up in those 10 snaps. So do you want to live in your fears or not?
Mike Tomlin likes to.
Yeah.
Just look at the playoff game last year. Anyways, Bryan, what do you think about the Najee Harris workload?
He's a timeshare in there too, in his fears. Here's the thing with that. You have got to ride this guy because there's nobody else there. I like what you both said about Derrick Henry, how he's durable. And you have those same players that if you look at a lot of rookie seasons, how well, true great running backs had those monster rookie seasons. And I really think that Najee would be having like an incredible off the rails. When I say off the rails, just like a runaway train type rookie season because of but he's not because of the offensive line at this point. But it's starting to get better, and they're starting to figure out how to use him. Yeah, you can't think that, all right, we've got to rest this guy more and more because he might get hurt. Because look, it doesn't matter when the hit's going to come. The hit that comes to get you might not be because you've been running way too long. The hit that might come that gets you, or the turn that tears you, might just be because it was the circumstance that you were in on that certain play. It's kind of just kismet. It's fate when it happens. Look at a guy that was a number 1 overall pick in the NFL, and Kajana Carter back in 1995, and he got hurt in his first preseason game because it was a bad cut.
Yeah, no, you're right. You are right. And let's get Sean Manahan, who sounds like my father-in-law. If the refs gave us $2, he said the refs stopped rigging our games, we can beat anyone. Oh my gosh, that is funny. Officiating has been sketchy at best. We'll put it that way. But I don't want to bring up.
I don't know that it's bad directed at the Steelers. I just think
it's just bad in general.
Just bad. I mean, watching a lot of the NFL today, I was just like, there was one play. It was Green Bay, Washington. Washington's getting down towards the goal line. They fumble the ball. It was like their second fumble in like 3 plays. And the Green Bay guy dives on it, obvious, but he let it squirt right out beside him. And the Washington lineman jumps on it and grabs it. They gave the ball to Green Bay. They called the ball Green Bay. They said that he had control before the lineman, got the ball out. And I'm like, just watch the replay. And I was not scared, but I just was saying, my wife was actually watching football with me. And I said, you know what? I don't have a dog in this fight, but if they don't correct this, then they might as well just get rid of replay altogether, because it's so obvious that they didn't get it right. So thank goodness they changed it and got it right. But there was some interesting things today. And before we go today, I do have to bring up a couple interesting things from the main AFC North game we were talking about today. So, but we can get to them later. We got some super chats to do.
Yes, we do. Arthur Steele gives us $4.99. Said Stallions. Sorry, just joined the AFC turmoil. I feel it's good for our squad. It makes the Cleveland game that much more crucial. Do you believe we're a playoff team? Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about can they win the AFC North? And we said about getting 4-2 is a good number to be able to get to. Honestly, even if they don't win the North, I believe there will be at least 2 teams from the North in the postseason. At least 2, because right now it's basically the North and the West fighting for 3 wild card spots when you think about it, because there's not much. I mean, we already said all the Titans are running away with it in the South. And then the East, it's really just the Bills and everybody else there too. So it's those other teams that the Steelers are still going to have to face that they're going to be fighting for wild card positioning. Most likely
the Raiders. The freaking loss to the Raiders.
Yeah.
Could come back and haunt them.
Yeah. That's hard.
Yeah, that's okay. Brian, what do you think?
What are they, like 9th in the conference right now? If you look at the standings, 9th or 10th, it just kind of right around there.
Coming into the week before the game on Thursday night, because they held tiebreakers over the Chiefs, Broncos, and Browns because they had a better conference record. But then, of course, when you knew one of the Browns or the Broncos was going to move ahead of them because they're going to get that extra win. So right now, believe it or not, I think that they're going to be in 8th because the Chiefs lost.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Chiefs are now 3-4. The Broncos are, I believe,
3-4.
3-4 as well.
Yep.
So yeah, if you're sitting at 8th,
or the Patriots,
the Browns are in strike. Yeah, the Browns are in striking distance, and so it's the cellar is bottom heavy. I believe there's teams that aren't getting out of that cellar. You could probably already say that the Jaguars, the Jets, the Texans, the Colts, and the Dolphins are probably gone already. And so then at that point, you have 11 teams trying to get into a 7-round playoff, and one of them being the Broncos, who I don't believe in either. So yeah, this is a playoff team just based on that. And they're finding themselves. Momentum is in their corner right now. How they come out and play in week 8 is going to be huge. If they win that game, they're absolutely contenders.
Okay, Matty Pepper.
And we're back.
And we're back. Gives us $2.99 in dingo dollars. Said it's just rigged in general then, as Dave put it. There you go.
Yeah,
Tyler
you know
W
what?
gives us $5. Go ahead.
This week's Matty Peverell show is not going to be called the War Room. It's going to be called the Conspiracy Room.
Bring your tinfoil hats. All right.
Yes.
$5 from Tyler W says, if there were a single piece that would really boost this team before the trade deadline, what position and player would it be? Good question. So trade deadline, position, player, who you think? Brian, we'll start with you.
Gosh. Wow.
Let's just go position first, and then we'll figure it out from there.
All right. I'll go ahead and say I'm going to actually say wide receiver.
Really?
Whoa.
Okay, that's interesting. I like that. Dave, what position for you?
To acquire a player via trade, I don't really think there is one. You're going to think I'm crazy.
But what position, if they were to pull off a trade, like what position would you target?
Believe it, it's so funny because people are like, why in the world would, because they were apparently in the market for Merciless. And some people are like, why in the world would the Steelers want another outside linebacker? I'm like, why wouldn't they? They really only have 3 right now. They already had one game where 2 of them were down, and the guy that started is not even on the team anymore. So I would say outside linebacker, but probably if Stephon Tuitt isn't going to be back, you should do something else at defensive line. It really comes down to that. Because to me, getting Tuitt back would be like getting a player in trade, but even better. Because if you get a player in trade, it's going to take several weeks to have them really up to speed. So that's why I don't know that getting a player Minkah Fitzpatrick was the exception when they just were able to throw him in there and scheme out their whole defense around him. It's going to take some time. But if you could get someone like a Stephon Tuitt back, that would be even better. But if he's not going to be back, then they might need to do something with the defensive line.
Does anyone know, is Alualu out for the year?
Most likely. I don't think they said the word season ending at any point.
Because he fractured his ankle. I don't know if it was just like
but they didn't
really
the Steelers
bad.
Didn't say season ending for Juju. He's the one who said it when he was when his own interview that said that the doctor told him it was season ending. I don't know that anyone's confirmed season ending for Alualu, but I wouldn't bank on him coming back.
Rats. Okay.
Brian.
You know, this isn't like baseball where you could go ahead and bring in a slugger, or you can bring in another third baseman to get you through August and get you into the playoffs. The one type of player this late in the game is the wide receiver that could probably have more impact than anything. On defense, it's a lot harder to plug some of those players in that you would get with a trade. But you bring in a guy like a Brandon Cooks or a wide receiver like that you could plug in that's a veteran and get on the same page with Ben. You might have the opportunity for a wide receiver to get on the page quicker. I think if you bring a cornerback in at this point as well, it's going to be really tough to get them involved. Like Dave said, Minkah Fitzpatrick came in and after the week 2 game and was there basically for the whole season. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where, you know, you really you bring a guy in now like they did with Avery Williamson at this time last year. He didn't have a chance to contribute because he didn't know the system. But bringing a guy that you can just say, hey, run this route, you're probably a lot better off.
Are you saying you don't believe in Ahkello Witherspoon? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, one thing I do want to say about what Brian said. There are 2 positions that you could definitely bring somebody in and they could basically take over right now. And that would be place kicker and punter, and the Steelers are fine right there, so we don't even need to worry about it.
Yeah, you're right.
But
you're right.
Do you not agree with the wide receiver thing? Because I think that's the easiest, probably the easiest position.
I just don't know that they need it.
Yeah, but the thing is that
I'm not saying they need it, but
who's the guy that they picked up? He's on the practice squad who they thought they would elevate. Is it Anthony
Miller?
Anthony Miller.
Anthony Miller's there. James Washington is still basically unused. So I just want to get this on the screen here. Marquis Hunt gives $1.99. Says, how confident are you the Steelers making the playoffs? I feel like we've talked about that a lot, Marquis. So make sure you go back and check out the show from the beginning. All right. We don't want to spend too much time on this podcast because we have a whole slew of information coming up. Dave, what did you want to say before?
I was just going to say, part of what we were doing here today was we wanted to, break down the Steelers where they stand in the AFC North. There was something that happened in the game that you all didn't see that I wanted to know your opinion on this. And that is, there's been a lot of talk with teams going on fourth down this year. And the Steelers, I think, are much more conservative about that than most teams. And I'm starting to think that maybe they have it right. Because what you guys might not have realized was that with just under 12 minutes left in the game, in their own territory, the Ravens went for it on fourth down and didn't get it and gave up a touchdown plays later. It wasn't that they just went for it on fourth down. It was 4th and 7. Is there a point that you're just like, I understand teams think their offenses are great, they can convert anything. Is there just a point where it just goes completely bat crap crazy that you're like, I mean, it's only a 10-point game with just under 12 minutes, and you're going to hand them a field goal, if not give them an easy touch. I mean, that was the play that changed everything. The next drive, now I understand it because then they were down 17, and it was like, I don't know, 8 minutes left in the game. They went to go for it on fourth and 5, got a false start, went to go for it on 4th and 10, got another false start, and still went for it on 4th and 15, threw it to the running back who went out of bounds 3 yards shy of getting the first down. And you could just see that they were done. The Ravens were done at that point. They realized that pretty much it felt like the game was over, and they just let them run the ball down their throat and run up the score. So I don't know if you guys realized that was something that was going on, but that 4th and 7 with 12 minutes left completely won and lost the game. Should we appreciate sometimes when the Steelers realize that, hey, at least we're giving ourselves a time to, you live to fight another day, because that game was over with 12 minutes left and it was only a 10-point game.
Wang's going to wang.
Yeah. I just didn't know if you guys knew about that situation.
I didn't, but you're right.
That was
a lot of people.
Huge.
Well, look at Buffalo. Monday Night Football, kick a field goal, go to play in overtime. They went for it, and they failed.
Yeah.
So everyone always talks about, living in the fears, and that's just because Mike Tomlin said that. But sometimes you just have to make the smart, educated decision.
Yeah.
And trust your team. Like 4th and 7, trust your defense to make a stop. But
yeah,
I don't know. All right, Bryan, anything to add before we call it a show?
Well, yeah, I do. I hope everybody enjoyed the bye week, got through the bye week, whatever you want. On BTSC, we decided to give you a lot on the audio platform as far as the bye week goes. And we had almost everybody. Mine is actually coming up to continue to get you through the bye week. But we also had some fans. Some members of our audience put together the show, and that debuted yesterday as well. So there was 5 on there, and I'm saying right now, if you want to throw your thoughts in there, feel free to send it to me as well. That would be fine. That's BAD8889@gmail.com. It's great to have everybody involved. Oh, did I screw up my own email address?
Yeah, you screwed up your own email address.
Am I hashtagging?
Been a long bye week, fellas.
B.A. Davis 8889.
Hit me up on Twitter, hashtag.
Hey, at least somebody gave me a new name in the live chat. So I think that's my new Twitter handle is Bryan Anthony D-Bag at hashtag Bryan Anthony D-Bag. So thanks, dude. I appreciate that. I know you love Dave and Jeff, but if you hung out with me, you'd really like me too, because I'm actually pretty cool in person when I'm not making you angry at home.
That's debatable. Okay,
but no,
show.
Check out our podcasts. So.
All right, good show. We will be back. Bryan will be back tomorrow on The Hangover. Make sure you check out all of our programs like my Let's Ride, Dave's Stat Geek on Thursday. Good show, guys. All right, we'll see you. Have a good one, and go Steelers.